Aw, don't worry, Jeets. You'll get to celebrate this year, and it won't be Freezer Day. Hey guys, MasakoX here, and happy holidays! For this festive season, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different in terms of what-ifery. It's going to be a sort of special type of what-if. It's still grounded in the world of Dragon Ball and its lore, don't get me wrong. This isn't just some kind of random story. This is kind of something that might actually lead to a certain character's development later on in the series. Okay, so what brought this on, Masako? Well, Philly and I were talking about what kind of video I could do for Christmas. I mean, I could have just done some more of the standard what-ifs and be done with it. Simple as that, right? But at the same time, we got talking about, well, do Dragon Ball characters actually celebrate Christmas? But then I got thinking about, ooh, how about if certain characters didn't celebrate Christmas? The question is though, who would be the right candidate for that? Well, after a few minutes of thinking, the answer was obvious. Vegeta! And most particularly, the Vegeta that was around during the pink shirt days just after Trunks had come with his warning about the androids. There are at least 3 years worth of story that we kind of just skipped over, so, you know, we could just stick anything here. Now, Vegeta is nowhere near as barbaric as he was when we first saw him on Earth during the Saiyan saga, but he's still trying to find his feet about how Earth works exactly, so he's at the beginning of his journey in terms of redemption. He's still trying to figure out why these Earthlings celebrate this bizarre holiday. Now, just because this Earth isn't like our Earth, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't celebrate Christmas. So I thought it'd be really good fun to try and explore, well, Vegeta's journey to understanding Christmas, akin to the Charles Dickens classic A Christmas Carol. And that means that Vegeta here is Ebenezer Scrooge. Now let's begin this story just after future Trunks left, warning us all about androids 17 and 18. Or at least he thought it was just going to be those two. It's the holiday season and everybody is getting into the spirit of the event. However, a certain somebody isn't, and I think you know who it might be. He basically doesn't understand the concept, and for good reason. You see, I can imagine that Saiyans don't really hold those kind of traditions, or any traditions really. If they did have traditions, they would be nowhere similar to ours. Or at least we're unaware of their traditions, and if that does change, I will stand corrected. So as the gang are getting ready, being festive and all that, Vegeta is doing his utmost to be an absolute jerk. Bulma and Dr. Briefs are putting up decorations with Yamcha and Puar helping them out, and Vegeta is doing nothing about this. He isn't helping. The only thing he's helping at is to make them feel bad by just standing around and hurling insults at everyone. He thinks they're absolutely stupid celebrating this pointless thing. Everybody's trying to ignore Vegeta during this time, but his constant berating of why he thinks Christmas is so silly and they shouldn't be doing this, it's really starting to annoy everybody, and it gets to the point where Bulma has no choice but to lash out. Which then in turn causes Vegeta to lash out, and then just blow up the remaining decorations, tearing it all apart and just going, "Ha! No more useless junk!" And then he just swans off feeling good about himself. Wow, he really is a jerk. Next, he feels like he really needs to get rid of this Christmas nonsense, so he's gonna go and try and find Kakarot so he can have a bit of training with him. So that means he doesn't have to think anything about other than just fighting what he loves. But little does he know that Goku is Champion Christmas, because most of the merchandise and promotional art or any kind of art to do with Christmas has Goku in it. When he gets to Goku's house, the whole place is filled with Christmas ornaments and even Gohan's outside building a snowman. And understandably, Gohan is scared at seeing Vegeta there all of a sudden. The prince glares at Gohan for a moment before Gohan tentatively says, "Merry Christmas, scram brat!" And naturally he does so. Goku then wanders out wondering what the commotion's all about, and then he sees Vegeta. He's happy to see Vegeta, thinking, "Oh boy, you wanna have some fighting, Vegeta? Merry Christmas!" Vegeta did want to fight with Kakarot, but right now he is far too distracted at all of the ornaments and decorations around him and is just getting his blood boiling again. Goku then explains that this time of year is absolutely awesome. Not only does he get a lot of presents, but he gets to eat. Even more than usual. And not only that, Goku remembers the early days with Grandpa Gohan. They used to celebrate Christmas in their own little way. They just get all cozy inside their little house when it's snowing outside. They'd have a fire on, they'd be cooking food and then eating it and just being together. It just really brings back some good memories for Goku. Vegeta, however, has absolutely no connection. Without saying anything else, Gohan's snowman is the victim of Vegeta's blast and then he just storms off again. Gohan isn't exactly crying, he's more dumbfounded as to why Vegeta's being such a Scrooge. Get it? Returning to Capsule Corp, Bulma isn't speaking to Vegeta at all, and really, does this really matter? I mean, Vegeta's kind of okay with that. He would rather just go to bed and end this day talking about Christmas nonsense, and he'd be rather rid of it so he doesn't have to think about it ever again. However, when he returns to his living quarters, he is met with a visage that he thought he would never see again. In the glass reflection of his door, he sees somebody he didn't expect. Nappa. You know where I'm going with this. He didn't think he would actually see this guy around. He thought he was in the afterlife. He is here to say that he has been a terrible person for being so flippant with this festive celebration which brings everybody together and make people happy. Vegeta has been doing the opposite. This is just a simple pleasure for humans. And I know that you might be confused as to why this is Nappa saying this. Isn't Nappa meant to be just as barbaric as Vegeta? But I think that things would have changed in the meantime since Nappa's demise and where we are right now. Since going to the afterlife and Hiffle, it means that Nappa's probably changed in some kind of way, because we don't really get to see him. I'd imagine through all of the correctional therapy and stuff like that in the afterlife, he'd be some kind of reformed character. Not exactly good, as it were, but at least understanding and a bit more wise. And besides, this is a Christmas story, so some things change just for the sake of the story. And also for the fact that Nappa would like to torment Vegeta after the whole abject act of betrayal that Vegeta committed back in the Saiyan Saga, remember? I think he'd still be sore about that. Because Nappa had been around Vegeta ever since the guy was a little kid. He has seen Vegeta grow up, and even if the Saiyans are meant to be cold and vicious mercenaries, they still have some kind of connection. Yes, it may be much less loving than human connections, but it's still something that brings them together. A sense of affinity. Something that Nappa would say like, Nappa and Vegeta are good allies, they work together well. Or at least, Nappa thought they did. As for Vegeta, he's not fazed at all at this apparition of such a weakling. He thought he was done with him, he still is. This is just a figment of his imagination. He ignores everything that Nappa's saying to him. Tonight, Nappa says, he will be tormented by 3 different spirits of entities from his past, present, and future. He will not know exactly who they will be, but they will be here to try and teach Vegeta the error of his ways. Yes, I know, it's going back to the Vegeta. Tonight you'll be tormented by 3 ghosts! And they're all me. This time they're not. What Nappa's trying to get at here is that Vegeta can no longer be the Saiyan prince that he once was. He needs to shatter the illusion that he's trying to cling onto and just embrace this new life, because otherwise it's just gonna drive him crazy. They can move on and just embrace the true desire for fighting and training and bettering oneself. Yeah, they're gonna go extinct if they're not careful, so this new life is their only chance for survival. Nappa says that if Vegeta can understand this for once, he might just actually spare Vegeta the visitations from these 3 spirits. He can have a good life here on this planet. He may not be the strongest, but he could definitely be at least the 2nd strongest being on this planet, and that is much better than he could ever have hoped for just 10 years ago. As a warning, Nappa then conjures up beeps and whirs and whistles from all of the computational stuff inside of Vegeta's quarters. Everything's going haywire and crazy. Nappa's just trying to prove a point here, and this is trying to make Vegeta scared. It's not making him scared, it's making him angry. In a fit of rage, Vegeta's now punching all of the computer interfaces around the room. It's all exploding and cracking and whirring and just everything's going crazy. Then a Christmas card appears on his table. It's from Bulma, trying to seek forgiveness and reaching out to Vegeta, but he doesn't want to have any of this. He just tears it in two, and that just tears it for Nappa. He then slams into bed, covers himself with the covers, and tries to forget everything that's going on around him and trying to drift into some kind of state of sleep. Now eventually, these things do cease and the prince drifts off. When the clock on the wall beeps 1 o'clock, something changes. The first ghost appears, and it resembles the form of Frieza. Masako, why is Frieza the ghost of Christmas past here? Well, it's actually quite obvious. Frieza, you see, is pretty much the embodiment of Vegeta's past. Yes, he may not be Vegeta's father, but he's as good as a father figure, and not a very good one. Yes, Vegeta did have King Vegeta, he was around for the first few years of his life, but he didn't really make much of an impact. He was more of a ruler than a father. I would imagine that Vegeta was actually tended to by either his mother or other attendants that were meant to take care of children. So I think in some strange Stockholm Syndrome kind of way, the child Vegeta would have actually looked to Frieza for some kind of reconciliation or some kind of state of solace as a father figure. Frieza, or at least the embodiment of Frieza, then whisks Vegeta back to the past. Back to a time before planet Vegeta was destroyed, where the little Prince Vegeta was playing around with some other minions, as well as meeting Nappa for the very first time. Through the eyes of a child, Nappa actually looked kinda cool. Not to mention that toupee-like head of hair on the top of his bonce, that was kinda funny. It amused the young prince. Vegeta remembers that moment, and that actually then morphs into a less happy memory. It's the vision of Beerus demeaning his father, making him look like a piece of trash whilst the prince, the young prince, watches on in shock. That memory burned into his mind because his once proud father was now just seen as weak. Frieza was bad enough, but this creature was even more terrifying. The scene changes again, and the illusion we then see next is the destruction of planet Vegeta, when the little kid finds out about all of this, and the only constant around, the only crumb of comfort he has, is that Nappa's there. From this new perspective, Vegeta can now relive the times from his past where it just was quite clear that, really, his childhood kinda stunk. But he doesn't actually really learn much from this. All he just can take away from this is that, good! I'm glad I managed to go away from Frieza and get to Earth somehow. What I did was right. I know I'm right. I'm not learning a thing. I don't need to learn a thing. The Frieza ghost chuckles. Oh, I'm not done yet, Vegeta. He is reliving all of the times where he was just alone. He had nobody to comfort him. Even Nappa was away on a mission. Vegeta was just left to his own thoughts, and that thought scared him. All Vegeta thought of himself was just as some kind of quirky oddity, not a prince. Yeah, ultimately Lord Frieza did give him a home and accommodation and some kind of a job, but this is not the existence for a young prince. He and the other Saiyans, Nappa and Raditz, were effectively prisoners. Up until he arrived on Earth and discovered these Earthlings, his life didn't really have that much meaning, other than the occasional sense of relevancy when he was able to dominate a certain race or a planet or something like that, to make himself feel superior. But it wasn't for his own benefit, it was for somebody else's benefit. Vegeta didn't really get a look in after that. We then fast forward through the times when Vegeta, Nappa and Raditz are going around the galaxy taking out different races and empires, all the way to the point when the younger Nappa was then taken out by Vegeta in the Saiyan saga. Vegeta is watching this from another angle, and he's not exactly thrilled with what he sees. He just looks on the ground, Nappa, who had been by his side ever since he was a child, effectively keeping him safe as a bodyguard, just battered and bruised, looking for help, and Vegeta just not giving it. Just gone. Just looking at Nappa's face, looking all happy, thinking that Vegeta had his back, that they'd be working together, that they'd be able to beat the odds somehow, and then just have his mind completely turned asunder and then vaporized in the sky. This new Vegeta is actually kinda shocked by this. And he's also shocked by being shocked. Have the humans somehow seeped his mind? Have they made him soft in some way? Because the Vegeta looking back at this is quite different from the Vegeta that did the action. Indirectly, being on Earth and being around humans has made him somewhat reevaluate his thoughts. However, his pride still remains strong, and despite all of this, he is able to cast off this apparition and then just forget everything that happened. He heads back to his bed, rolls over, and goes back to sleep. Thinking that he's no longer dreaming, Vegeta then gets out of bed to head to the bathroom to give himself a cold shower, trying to get his thoughts away from all of this Christmas stuff. But halfway towards the door, he can sense that someone is in there. He is on guard, ready to jump any kind of intruder that might be in there. He sees the shower curtain twitch. He raises his hand and then yanks it away, taking it off the chains. It reveals another cloaked figure, cowering in fright, but this time, the figure is none other than present-day Bulma. What is she doing in the shower with this get-up on? The apparition not only looks like Bulma, but it also sounds like her. Not wishing to be immediately hostile with this figure who had, in some kind of way, indirectly given him shelter and some kind of place to stay and eat stuff, Vegeta just backs off a little bit and just says in his typical fashion, "Alright, what do you want?" He may not have raised his fist, but Vegeta isn't exactly all that courteous. He demands to know what it wants, or she wants, or whatever. However, this figure does not act like Bulma, because Bulma would normally raise her voice to this kind of tone, but this time, this figure isn't. Instead, the Bulma ghost calmly walks out of the shower and says nothing. This is actually unsettling Vegeta because even though he knows that this isn't Bulma, This Bulma may look and sound like it, is not acting, and then... This is weird. The Bulma then grabs Vegeta by the shoulder, sending him whirling through a period and time warp of infinity, only to end up downstairs. Bit much, don't you think? It's the downstairs living quarters just now. Vegeta can recognize some bit of the carnage that he'd done earlier, but the decorations are back up again. And not only is it Bulma, Dr. Brief, Yamcha, and Puar, the rest of the gang are there too, helping out. They're putting up new decorations and working together as a team. Vegeta doesn't see the point of him seeing all of this. What are they trying to get at? Why? You know, this is Christmas. This is what he was trying to destroy. These guys are just having fun and being all silly and... Clearly, Vegeta's trying to rail against the system here. Vegeta wants to know the reason why these idiots aren't ignoring his calls to forget about Christmas. However, the ghost Bulma keeps her hand on his shoulders and motions for him to keep watching. The mood isn't of resentment or anger about Vegeta's actions. They've forgotten about that. The mood instead is jovial, with everyone together and working together. This is a time of peace and joy and goodwill. Vegeta's impertinence and defiance had no effect on them at all. It's like some kind of kid having a tantrum and then nobody paying attention. So really, the kid doesn't get his way, in this case Vegeta. His anger was therefore meaningless, and the friendship that everyone else has keeps them strong, and they just have a good time. They're not gonna let the prince spoil this in the slightest, and this makes Vegeta feel kinda small. Usually when he does stuff like this, people take notice, people get angry, they get flustered, he makes an impact, but this time, nothing happened at all. Despite him being stronger than everyone else in the room, except Kakarot unfortunately, nobody really seems to care. They're just going about their business like Vegeta didn't exist. This is resistance in the emotional sense, and this is something that Vegeta doesn't get. But Vegeta this time is just getting flustered with his own fact that he's being ignored. He is swatting away at Ghost Bulma, trying to get her to go away. He's ignoring her calls, but remember, this is a ghost Vegeta. She's just kind of disappearing into some kind of ether and then reforming every time he tries to swat her. It's a fruitless exercise, so eventually he just goes... She repeats herself. She calls out Vegeta, saying that this type of existence and hostility, trying to cling on to the past, is just so unnecessary. He shouldn't be trying to live as a sole entity and actually work together as a unit for once. He doesn't have to be a lone wolf anymore. Frieza isn't there to torment him. He can be his own person. He can start anew. He can know himself as the Prince of all Saiyans. He managed to outlive Frieza. No one ever thought that was possible, but it is. Totally. He can actually have allies. Allies that he can depend on. But Vegeta then just swats this away, saying, oh, he had allies already. Why does he need more? He had Nappa and Raditz. Surely that's enough. That was like what the humans have, right? Well, no, Vegeta, not at all. Clearly, had there been no subjugation, and these three Saiyans were not under the tyranny of Lord Frieza, would they have actually socialized or coexisted in any way? I don't think so. The Saiyans had a major class system. Vegeta was a Saiyan elite, Nappa was a mid-class warrior, and Raditz, he was one of the low-class stuff. The only reason that they worked together was because they were under a force majeure, and that was Frieza. As a result of all that, Nappa was Vegeta's minder, and Raditz just somehow showed up. I would not exactly call that a harmonious union, would you? To add even more dissonance to this, Vegeta is then reminded again that, honestly, that Vegeta was the cause of these two constants being removed from his life. Nappa, he took out himself, and when Raditz's life was impacted, and in fact he actually left the mortal coil, did he do anything to try and help his friend and ally? No. They just laughed about it and decided to just take on the people that took him out. They only went to Earth because it was fun. What the Saiyans have is nothing like what the humans have. That is genuine friendship. What the Bulma Ghost is trying to say is that what the humans have is something that Vegeta can have as well. All he has to do is just embrace this new life and roll with it, or at least just tolerate it. If he wanted to have any hope of beating Kakarot, he needs to integrate himself with the gang and just get on with them. And if he's not careful, if he's beaten too much, Vegeta might just flee the planet, have some kind of lone wolf existence. I mean, basically, he'd just end up doing what he did before he wound up on Earth. Vegeta then spots Gohan putting up some decorations and then reading some books. He doesn't understand why this Saiyan hybrid is putting all of his time into studies and not just training. But the ghost points out that Gohan isn't like any other Saiyan. If Vegeta wishes for the Saiyan dynasty to live on, it has to adapt to its surroundings, and Gohan is the embodiment of that. He is the hope of the Saiyan race. And to Vegeta, this is the first bit of sense that the ghost has spoken about at all. Now, Vegeta sees Gohan in a different light. You see, he'd never really viewed Gohan before with anything other than disgust, but now he can see all of the potential inside this child. He hadn't realized what Gohan was capable of, but now he's beginning to see it. It's now becoming clear. Now, if you want to know where I'm going with this, because in Dragon Ball Super, Vegeta does clearly state that Gohan had the most potential out of anybody in the Z Fighters. So I think this is where that little crumb of information actually originates, or at least in my own little canon. The ghost then takes Vegeta back to his bathroom and turns away as if she was ready to leave. Vegeta then demands to know why this ghost took the face of Bulma specifically. Why exactly? Well, the ghost turns around with a very mischievous expression. Not only can you have allies and friends, but if you try hard enough, you could also have me. And without saying another word, the ghost disappears from view. Vegeta is left perplexed as to what just happened. Despite all the revelations that have fallen before him and all the information that had come his way, he's still not fully ready to listen to them entirely. He then resolves himself. He is still around, he still survives, and he can still have greatness. He doesn't have to change a single thing. Oh, but Vegeta, you haven't met the third apparition yet. Thinking that he'd won the battle and therefore the war about these stupid ghosts, he then goes back to bed, covers himself with the covers, and drifts off into another happy little sleep. He thinks that he's going to get the best night's sleep of his life. Oh, Vegeta, you're going to get the exact opposite. He wakes up to find himself suddenly unable to breathe. He's in a compact space. He cannot breathe. He cannot see. He can't really hear anything. It's all muffled. But outside, he can hear a muffled voice. He doesn't know whose it is exactly. It sounds old, but what's going on? Well, we're gonna have to wait for the conclusion of that on Christmas Day to find out the identity of the ghost of Christmas future. Right at the end of part 2, Vegeta had found himself buried somewhere. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't see, he could barely hear, and he had no choice but to try and dig himself out of it. Slowly losing consciousness, Vegeta blasts a beam right up in the air with his remaining strength, and it's just enough to be able to carve out the earth above him. So that means he can at least fly up and try and escape, or at least just clamber out, gasping for air. What does he see when he comes out the top? Well, nothing but wasteland and the night sky. And that's it. It's like it's a barren world. For a moment, Vegeta is just left there on his own, just with his thoughts. He's just trying to process what exactly happened here. How did he get underground? Why was he underground? Is anyone here? Is he alone? He has so many questions. Is Bulma here, the woman with the green hair? He'd take the buffoon Nappa just for some kind of company or some kind of answer. Then, after what seems like hours, the third ghost appears. And this visage is not something he immediately recognizes. The ghost of Christmas future is Kakarot, but it's not the Kakarot that he's used to. This Kakarot is not his happy-go-lucky self, not the youthful self that Vegeta really despised. He looks far older than he is in the present, like he's about to meet his maker. Vegeta's all too well aware of the fact that Saiyans don't really age that much until the age of 80, and when they get to that age, they pretty much just fall off the wagon and there's not much time left for them. You know, it's all meant to be about keeping themselves in their prime for the longest time so they could be useful in a battle. Goku's hair is pure white. His skin, it may be kind of youthful, not too many liver spots, but it does have some quite substantial wrinkles, as if to note that, you know, Goku's seen a lot of things and he has aged quite a bit. This still catches Vegeta off guard though, despite being aware of this. He's not seen that many Saiyans who get to this point because, you know what they do. Goku welcomes Vegeta to this really strange place, but Vegeta cuts him off, thinking, Yeah, what kind of nonsense lesson are you trying to teach me now, Kakarot? When the Goku ghost, or Ghost-Ku, doesn't shut up, Vegeta then makes him shut up by punching him in the face, thinking that Goku would dodge, but he doesn't. He actually got the jump on him. The old Goku ghost is down on the ground, gasping for air, coughing. He really got winded. He stays down there for a moment. Vegeta moves a little closer, thinking he actually injured him quite a bit. But then, just like the old wily Goku, He then powers up to Super Saiyan just for a brief second and then punches Vegeta back, catching him off guard then too. That Goku, he still got it, albeit fleetingly. Vegeta didn't quite get to see the actual full Super Saiyan Goku in this cowl, but he could definitely feel it. By the time Vegeta gets up again, he's no longer in the Super Saiyan form and Goku is just coughing and spluttering and just getting back on his feet properly. What's he doing here? What is the whole Christmas message this time? They're basically in it right now. You know, this wasteland, nothingness. You getting what I'm trying to say, Jeets? This area isn't just an Earth wasteland. It's not even Earth at all. It's not even in their galaxy. It turns out that if Vegeta carried on the path that he was actually setting for himself in the present, he would wind up here, all alone, with no one to care about him, no one to fight, no one to spar with. He'd be just on his own. This was spurred on by the fact that the Z-Fighters, and Bulma included, were getting sick and tired of Vegeta's constant trying to rage against the system and resistance and just being an overall jerk, and it got to the point where they actually told Goku to take care of him. They wanted rid of him, and Goku's up for a fight, and every time Vegeta would try and get stronger, Goku would just get even stronger and beat it down to the point where even Goku was getting sick and tired of him. So Vegeta had no choice but to just leave this planet to try and find a better challenge and people that weren't so sentimental and lovey-dovey. He'd basically just become what he was in the past again, and this time without the direction of Frieza. With his pride damaged because he was beaten by Kakarot and he knew that he wasn't the strongest Saiyan out there, he just had to find things to do. He ended up basically like an intergalactic drifter. He had grown weary, and despite the fact that he could still rip people in half, he could still do that, but he didn't really want to anymore. He couldn't be bothered. It was just, where's the fun in that? All of this drifting for decades had just broken his spirit, to the point where it was beyond repair. He was forgotten by history, and eventually he succumbed to his loneliness. And the only reason that he was even buried, that anyone could be bothered to be buried, was a wandering passerby dug a shallow grave for him just to get rid of the smell. That was no way for a prince to be just honored. This gets through to Vegeta. He is horrified. He does not want to leave this world in this way. This is unbefitting for a prince. He had all the power in the world. He was one of the strongest beings in the galaxy. He could rule over men. He could rule over everything. He could show fear in the hearts of all the souls of people, and to end up as this really lonely and sad drifter? All because I just can't get on with some decorations? Really? Why didn't this future self resort to doing that? It was so easy! The opportunity was right there, and Kakarot wouldn't stop him! But the answer is staring him in the face. Kakarot, now grey and old, had obviously worn him down so much that his pride and spirit were just completely broken. It had changed Vegeta into a very desperate soul who was trying to find some kind of meaning in life, and thus he escaped the planet. Nobody wanted him, nobody remembered him, nobody wanted to train with him because he was just such a jerk. And really, that hurts a Saiyan a lot. With Planet Vegeta gone and the Saiyan name slowly disappearing into the ether that is time, Vegeta had no leg to stand on. He will not have that. Those other two ghosts, they didn't really get the message across, but this one did. And it had to come from Kakarot of all people. Goku was the one to get through to him that if he wanted to retain his princely title and be seen with respect from pretty much anyone he would meet, he just has to toe the line. He doesn't have to love it, he just has to tolerate it. Just roll with it. He begins to understand. He feels joy and relief that he will not be forgotten. He will be the prince of all Saiyans, and he will make sure that people remember that. Goku, the old Goku, nods sagely and says, good enough, and just turns around, walks away, his job done. Vegeta scrambles downstairs to see if everybody's still there, and they are, all crumpled on couches, camp beds, the floor, everyone just really tired after a really hard day's work putting up decorations. Vegeta looks around at them, and actually begins to appreciate them. You know what? They're not all that bad. They don't have to know that. Vegeta's rapid breaths start to slow down. He calms down. At this point, Bulma enters the room and is just harumphing at Vegeta, thinking he's about to destroy everything again. Before she leaves the room, ignoring Vegeta, he pipes up, "Woman! I'm I'm sorry for what I did. Not really looking her in the eye. Despite this lackluster apology, this still catches Bulma off guard. Vegeta? Apologizing? Oh my goodness, it's a Christmas miracle! Bulma smiles and just says, don't worry about it, it's not the end of the world or anything. Vegeta then shudders, remembering the last dream that he had. Or it was more like a nightmare. For the rest of the day, Vegeta isn't exactly like Scrooge and celebrating Christmas with all of his heart and stuff like that. That's just not Vegeta's character, at least not right at this point. I think at the very least, he will just tolerate it. He'll just get into it somewhat. Maybe secretly enjoy it, but he won't let anyone else know that. That's not befitting for a prince. But you know what? For Bulma, for everyone else, this is good enough. His pride is intact. His name will not be forgotten, and that's all that Vegeta cares about. If all he has to do to have that is just celebrate this whole silly Christmas thing, then so be it. And there we go. That's Vegeta's celebration of Christmas, all done and dusted in a what if. It's just a little bit of fun, and I know it's non-canonical, but I just thought it was a little bit of fun trying to understand Vegeta's character and see how it would mesh with a classic Dickens story, to see whether it would actually work. It kind of does. I know that Scrooge actually completely reformed himself. I know that Vegeta wouldn't, but I think he would at least do enough so that means he'd just get by. I don't think the gang would expect him to do a complete 180 overnight. They're just happy that they're not going to be berated for it. So what do you guys think? Did you like this little what if? Did you have a good Christmas? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe and have a happy holiday. Catch you later.